Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Quarantine Film Series. I'm your host, Kabir Segal, coming to you live from the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia, my parents' place. Mom, please get off the Wi-Fi so I can do the show. So this is episode 120 something. We've brought the show back from our summer hiatus, and there's a lot of interest and demand. Where did you go? I didn't go anywhere. I just went into my bedroom. I used to broadcast from the dining room, but now I'm in the bedroom. I've been quarantining from the quarantine. So look, if you want to be kept in the loop of when the shows are coming or who we're interviewing, subscribe to my social media. You'll see all the notifications. We're on all the platforms, maybe on TikTok soon. We're looking into this. So, and if you have questions, just drop a question into the comment field, and I'll be sure to ask the artist. Let us know where you're watching from. Cities, states, extra points for counties. We love counties. And also, why did we start this? Just so you know, we started this broadcast back in March in earnest because the creative calendar was canceled. A lot of friends who are musicians, their gigs were canceled, film festivals were canceled. So this is an effort to put the spotlight back on the artists, back on the people who create. I mean, they pour their hearts and lives and souls into these projects, and we want to make sure that that their work's getting out there. So, you know, if you're watching this, be a patron of the artist, support the artist, watch the film, stream the music, do what you can to keep the creative arts alive, because we need everyone. We need everyone to work together to advance the arts. So that's the Quarantine Film Series. You know what you're doing here. Keep watching. Now we have an incredible guest. She is a talented filmmaker, conceptual artist. She's been an Emmy-nominated creative artist, and I'm so delighted that she's on the show. One of the most talented people we've had, and she has a new film. It's going to be coming out in just a few days. We should probably get a clock up here, countdown to the release. Please welcome to the show the remarkable auteur, filmmaker, broadcasting live from New York City. Welcome, Catherine Gund.
It's great to be here. You're in the ATL. I'm in NYC. And I love the whole idea of this, which is so true, that the arts really suffered a huge blow. They're about bringing people together and celebrating communication and understanding of the world. And that got so cut off. So I love that you're doing this. I can't believe it's been so many days.
Yes. Thanks for that. I wanted to ask you first, how has the quarantine affected you? What did you have lined up that has been postponed or canceled?
Oh my gosh, we thank goodness that Sundance fell in right before the quarantine began. And my most recent film, Aggie, which opens on October 7th at Film Forum on their virtual theater, and then continues on to some other streamers the next week nationally. But this film, Aggie, was in Sundance, and we had lined up all these festivals and screenings, panels, and actual prison visits and concerts and art exhibits, because that's what the film's all about, all these things. And I'm just so grateful that we got to do Sundance, which was a huge high. People are there because they love movies and they want to love your movie, and it's a great audience to share it with. And then we got a screening in LA at the Hammer, and we did a screening in New York at the Doc Fortnight Film Festival. And then everything just shut right down, and the festival's canceled, and no one knew what to do, and we kept putting off our theatrical. We were supposed to open in theaters nationwide at the very day after Labor Day. And we kept thinking that might happen, at the beginning. I took my kids and went to quarantine with my mother in Connecticut, and we thought it might be 2 weeks or 3, maybe. And it just, as we all know, as the months, the days, the weeks went by, and it seemed like March lasted, and April, and then May was like, drink, it went so fast. And
Yeah.
Now we're already in the fall. So there were a lot of things. I mean, I think everybody has lost so much. And I feel like, I'm got more mental health when I focus on what I've gained and what I've learned and experiences that I've had. Because if you start focusing on the loss, we have over 200,000 people who've died in this country. And so it feels like a film festival loss isn't such a big thing in comparison. So
Hmm.
I just think, but then the young children are losing this socializing time and learning how to read with their peers and all the beautiful things they make and create together. The older children who are about to finish college and go off into their lives or with their parents, and even older children like you.
Yeah.
And that there's just so much change, but I don't like to frame it in terms of loss. I like to frame it in terms of what we are learning.
Yeah, what a beautiful, inspiring life philosophy and a life affirming life philosophy. So if you're watching out there, you want to feel better about life. This is it. Detach and compare, and look at the blessings you have. I just want to ask before we get into the film, what is your day to day like? Do you have a quarantine habit or ritual? How do you maintain creativity and not get into the doldrums of or get into a rut?
I've been surprised because I really do like sort of ritual. I like being with my team in production. I like socializing with my friends in the evening. I like hiking on the weekends. All of that, now it's sort of, we all work all day, which many of us were already doing too much of, and all week. So there's not, the first day that was a holiday during quarantine, and my team and I, we were like, no one's going to work on that day. And we were like, who's not going to work? But there have been some amazing things. I do have 4 children, and my focus at the beginning was to make sure they stayed connected to the people in their lives, even though we were just alone together. And then I took that advice for myself too. And one thing that's been surprising, and someone in my office said it's like creative cross training, is that I've become totally obsessed with throwing pottery on the wheel. And I just lose, I go up. I mean, now I'm not in Connecticut very much. I go back and forth between my mother in Connecticut and New York City. But on the weekends, I'll lose 4, 5, 6 hours, not lose, gain hours, just making bowls. And the whole metaphor is about the centering of the clay and centering of ourselves. And you can't do it unless you're centered. And then it's taking the inside out. It's really putting the inside on the outside, and how do we manifest that in our relationships. And so I've tried to stay on the philosophical
Yeah.
side. I mean, I did jump very much into, I produce and direct. Right now I'm producing a couple of projects because of the urgency of the topics, and because I think short films really have a purpose right now, and an outlet, because people need to see them, and they want to learn, and they have small periods of focus and time.
Yeah.
So I've focused on the producing and making sure that some voices are really getting out there that wouldn't
Awesome. I
otherwise.
hope we can see a collection of your ceramics and at an
Should have
exhibition.
brought
We should
them.
get you back on the show for we'll create a visual art edition. So
Great.
the film was wonderful. Or I haven't seen it, but I've seen the trailer and I read all about it. I'm so excited to see it coming soon, as you mentioned on Film Forum. I wanted to just ask you why. I know this is your mother, and so why did you want to make this project? It feels like it's a project born of love. What was the impetus to make this project happen?
It's interesting because I am really close to my mother and I adore her, and I'm a filmmaker, and I never thought the two things were going to come together. I kind of was avoiding that like the plague. But then she did this amazing thing a few years ago. She's a collector and a philanthropist, but she brought those two things together. And I thought the evidence of intention behind the sale of this incredibly valuable piece of artwork. She sold a painting for $165 million, but she didn't just sell it to get the money. She sold it to end mass incarceration. And to do that, she sold it and immediately put the money into a 5-year spend down fund. So it was basically, I'm going to get all this money into the field to the artists and the organizers, the activists and the lawyers in the next 5 years. So $20 million a year at the most creative junctures with the smartest people who are thinking about narrative change and how we can change the cultural perception and understanding of criminal justice, of what a criminal is, of the legacy of slavery as it's manifested in the prison system, all of that coming together in some really vibrant examples, not the least of which is Brian Stevenson's work at the Equal Justice Initiative. And he's the most important defense lawyer alive. right now. And he realized that the law, he could do certain things with the law, but he also could change hearts and minds if he worked with art and culture. And he created a museum, the Legacy Museum, and a memorial, and a place in, in Montgomery that people could come, learn, heal, get inspired, and really educate themselves, because that's what I think this movement is about. And it's been great during quarantine how much of a reckoning, a racial reckoning, is upon us, and how many people seem open to learning and educating themselves and starting to speak out more in support of justice and true equality and treating everyone as human, which we don't do.
Mm-hmm. I thought a nice reflection of your mother's role as an arts philanthropist and art and justice was her being the first recipient of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Leadership Award. What did it mean for her to win that? And obviously the justice is passing. We're all lamenting that. So what did it mean for her to earn that award?
Yeah, it was a really incredibly moving. Like, I had no idea how moving it was going to be, but they're two women of the same generation. And what they said to each other on the stage that night was so moving, because they grew up in this different time. In my film, you see there's a moment Aggie's talking about when Truman was president. And when she says that, you realize she's lived for a really long time. And so they're both heroes. I was honored to be able to show a clip of the film at the ceremony where Justice Ginsburg presented this inaugural leadership award to my mother. And I stood up, and they told me at the last minute to stand up and contextualize the clip or introduce it. And I was totally unprepared, and I got up there and I was right next to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I couldn't stop crying. And I was talking about what a hero she was. And at a moment like this, when our democracy is being just plowed over, it really was being in the presence of a giant, even though she's a tiny person. And I was trying to introduce the clip, and finally all I said was, "I can't believe justice is even part of your name." And she did laugh at that. But I think it was an incredible thing. I'm glad that she got to do that. It was one of the last things that she did get to do, and it was an incredible honor for my children and I to be there.
Yeah, fascinating story. What was it like? Walk me through the timeline of making the film and some nerdy questions we're getting about
Great.
the cameras that you used, the lenses that you use. So if you want to nerd out with us, please share.
That's great. I love those kind of questions. And actually, I think it's Filmmaker magazine, one of my camera people, Rachel Lears, who's the incredible director of Knock Down the House, a runaway, amazing film from last year, about AOC and others who ran, and in AOC's case, won. And Rachel wrote about the cameras and the lenses that we used in Filmmaker. And there's a great photograph of her while she's filming that I found that I clicked. So I can't get into like the exact lenses, although you can look it up there. But I do know that what I found interesting is that we use such a variety. And to me, normally that would maybe look sort of incoherent or messy. And I think in this case, the layering and the quality of the different kinds of artwork that are just, you feast on throughout the film. There's over 200 pieces of art or kinds of art. There's films, books, and dance and music. And then there's all this visual art, photographs, prints, paintings, sculptures. And so there's so much texture that the different kinds of camera just create texture. And part of that was because we shot all of the conversations instead of doing interviews, because my mother and I could not manage that. So they're all conversations between her and other people, my children, artists, her friends. And we get the interviews kind of done that way. So we had 2 cameras, and they were always different cameras. So there's that element. And then the important thing for me was that the only time I could get my mother to really focus in a quiet place and answer just some little questions I had was to pick up my phone when we were in the back seat of the car. So there's a bunch of sections that are just shot on my phone. And I think as a lesson for quarantine, but even beforehand, is that we all have a video camera now. When I started in these collectives in Paper Tiger Television, and then I started a collective in the AIDS organizing group ACT UP. We started a collective called Diva TV, Damned Interfering Video Activist Television. We made our own press passes, but there were only about 4 or 5 cameras, and now everyone has a camera. And so I think, and what you're doing is so incredible, saying, look, we're still alive. Things are different. Things are not what any of us expected a year ago. God, go away, 2020. But, we need to keep going, and we do still have this deep inquiry and curiosity. We still have a world we need to make fairer. If anything, this is showing how all the manifestations of the inequality in this are deep and real, and they need to be addressed.
Yes, and Diva TV was Stop the Church. That was one of the productions, right? Back in the day.
Like prayer. I was reading. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I want to just maybe I don't know if it's you want to answer this, but why was it difficult to get your mom to sit for an interview? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course I'll answer that. I mean, I don't know what you think the problem was, except that she's just notoriously camera shy and really shuns the spotlight. And that you'll see when you see the film is sort of one of the arcs of the film, which is that the central grapple I had with making it was, how do I tell her that she's worth making a movie about when part of the reason she's worth it is because she would never want a movie made about her. So there was a lot in the silences and in the erasure. Her wit is about dry, it's things that are left unsaid. So it was hard to do that. But I think it's because when we did an interview, she was just so stiff and uncomfortable. And I was also somewhat mortified. I don't know why. I mean, I think just it seemed silly when I know that she can banter so easily, but to sit and answer questions, it was just too dry.
Yeah.
So we ended up setting it up as conversations. And then she just opened up. What people don't realize is that the majority of the conversations were her asking other people, the other person, questions. So I had to cut through and kind of find some of the places they actually got a question in and where she maybe answered one. But she, to me, it wasn't just that she was trying to ruin my movie. It was also that she is genuinely curious. And that's actually part of her magic, is that she's always learning. People, think that parents have all the answers, or, that she made some decisions at some point. All of us are challenged to how much can we actually grow and change even after we're a grown-up. And she really does that. And now I see why. It's partly her exposure and openness to art, whether it's books or visual art, or, she saw the 13th. That was what she saw the night before she started the Art for Justice Fund. She saw Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th, and she just thought, I really could do more, and I'm not doing everything I can. And that's why I made the movie about her. I wanted people to see that and think, like, how could this person get to be the person that would do something like that?
Yeah, wonderful. Jeff in Singapore is asking about the post-production soundtrack. Walk us through the music and the sound of the film.
Yes, my editor, Gil Seltzer, who is fabulous and I've worked with before and hopefully we'll get to work with again, really is great with music. And we worked with the mastermind, Jason Moran, on the soundtrack. He also did the soundtrack for 13th and for Selma. And he's a musician, pianist, got a MacArthur Award. But Gil would set up these moods with kind of slug sound, slug music, and clips from different pieces of music that he knew of that would set a tone. And then Jason was able to watch the scenes with us, with the music on, with the music off, and conceive of how he wanted to bring to life and create another layer of the artistry that is film. We get to work with so many artists in the making of movies, which I love too. So we worked with him, Samora Pinder-Hughes, who is a wonderful Art for Justice partner, but also a friend, and he wrote the theme song, which I'll send you the music video because
Awesome.
We just made it. And so he, actually my youngest child sings the theme song at the end of the film with Samora playing the music and also backup singing.
Yeah, Jason Moran is amazing. I love his music.
He's amazing, right? And for him to work with us on this was such a gift. And he really, you can have so many different kinds of music, but there's sort of this this internal coherence, a real thread, and I think it creates a powerful soundtrack. So I'm glad they asked. Are you frozen or am I? Is your mom on the? Uh-oh. What happened? What should I talk about? Um, let's see. Yes, I think Kabir is frozen, so I could keep talking about the soundtrack. I mean, we do work in post production really closely. Obviously, there's real production folks on this call, and we worked with a company called Sim International, and we had a wonderful colorist who had just gotten here from France and well, from London, but started in France, and then we worked with a great sound mixer.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, I always have a phone backup in case there's a
That
Wi-Fi.
was very smart. Here you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So before we let you go, I want to ask you about your other movie, Shavella. Let's just put those graphics up on the screen. Tell us about this project quickly and why you wanted to make it.
Chavella was a wonderful dip into some archival as well, because it was a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I found some footage that I had shot in the early 90s with this legend in Mexico City named Chavella Vargas. And she's a ranchera singer who was lovers with Frida Kahlo, and she lived this incredible life, and she wore pants in the 40s when no women were wearing pants. She became a huge international superstar after I had met her. And so when I met her, she was 70. I thought it was the end. I was like, all of my friends in Mexico City were saying, you've got to get her on video, because I had that big camera in my backpack. So we went and we did these interviews, and we talked about her loving women and her struggles with alcoholism. And literally a month after I left, she was sort of discovered by this producer in Spain and taken to Madrid, and she met Pedro Almodovar and became a huge muse of his best friend, or as he says, she called him her husband on earth. And she's in, her music's in all his films, and often there's a picture of her somewhere in some of the mise en scène. She's just amazing. So I found that footage, and she had died at 90. She went on to live for, another 22 years and perform all over the world. And so then I went around and interviewed Pedro Almodovar and others who had performed with her and known her, and her former lover. And so we put together this film, and I think it really is about